Hello everyone. Today we are going to look at fear, and I think this is a very good subject to be looking at because I think many of us, including myself, are very fearful of this coronavirus that's going round. And we're all afraid because it is quite dangerous, and I think really we do need to be careful as well. I'm afraid for my son. He has Down syndrome, and if he were to get it, he would be very ill indeed. No doubt he would need hospital care. And with such a shortage of ventilators, I know he would not be offered one. But let's look at this more closely. Have you ever thought where fear comes from? Well, it's actually a chain reaction in the brain. And it begins with a stressful stimulus and ends with releasing chemicals. And they cause your heart to race, you fast breathing, and suddenly you get energized muscles, like superhuman power, all of a sudden, so you can escape. And that is also known as fight or flight. Fear is a horrible feeling. Really horrible, isn't it? It's something that we don't want. We don't like it. It's really, really consuming at times. We don't consciously trigger it either. And quite often, our fears are actually unjustified. Like a phobia, for instance. You know, we can be scared of something, can't we? Very, very frightened. But really, that thing is not going to hurt us. Many years ago, I had acute agoraphobia. So that was an irrational fear. I was totally afraid of leaving a room, let alone leaving the house. And that all consumed me. I didn't like it. I was not in control of it. But really, there was nothing that was going to happen to me if I left the room or I left the house. That would have been unpleasant. We can feed our fears. We can also encourage them. A scary movie, say, can make you frightened when you don't need to be. And we can breed fear. And we can pass fear on. Do you know if as a parent we're frightened of thunderstorms or spiders, we would generally pass that fear on to our children because they'll think it's something to be afraid of. They'll see us and how we react. So we need to be careful about these things. Or fear can actually be good. Yes, it can be, because it can prevent us from going into danger. Yeah? Like if there's a fire, you'd be fearful of jumping into it for getting burnt. That's one good example. Or swimming in a rough sea and things like that. Things that are going to harm us, walking too near the edge of a cliff. But fear does not come from God. Okay, He does not want you and I to be afraid. We have to remember that God is way, way larger than our fears. Like massive larger. Massive larger. You need to realise how much larger God is. Because when you start thinking in those positive terms, you'll realise that we don't need to be afraid. God is not a human like you and I. He is so much greater than that. So he does not think in limited human terms like you and I do. Now it says in 2 Timothy chapter 1 verse 7. For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity. Oh, let me try that again. See? For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline. So you must never be ashamed to tell others about the Lord. Now I've got all muddled because I went wrong. See? I was only meant to read chapter 7 in that one verse. But never mind, you've got the second verse there as well. Because we can fear telling people about the Lord, can't we? I mean, that's quite appropriate, really. We can worry about looking silly, or we can worry about being shunned, you know. But when we think how important it is that people do know, then, yeah, we should be telling them, not worrying about what we look like always. So from that, we have come to the conclusion that God did not give us a spirit of fear. The enemy wants us to be bound to fear, doesn't he? He thinks he can get the upper hand over us. But God wants us to be free of it. He promises to be with us, to be our help and shield. And he tells us that perfect love casts out all fear. God's perfect love, Jesus' perfect love for us, can cast out all fear. Can we believe him? Well, yes, we can, because God finds it impossible to lie. To lie is a sin, and we know that God is without sin. I'm going to just finally read you one more verse, and that is in Isaiah 41, verse 10. Don't be afraid, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. Let us look to God in these days of worry and fear. And let us not be afraid, because God is on our side and God is in control. Tell him everything. If you're afraid, tell him. And remember, he is there, knowing the situation, knowing what we are going through, and always loving and always caring, and always wanting us not to be afraid. Thank you. Goodbye.